There is a sentence that separates the people who spend their entire lives working for someone else's dream from the people who eventually build their own. And most people never even hear it because nobody tells them the truth about why they are stuck. The truth is this: you can work 40 years, follow every instruction, show up early, stay late, never miss a deadline, and still end up exactly where you started because effort was never the missing ingredient. Thinking was. Somewhere along the way, you were taught to be a good employee, but nobody taught you how to become a leader. And those are two completely different skill sets built on two completely different ways of seeing the world. This is Jim Rohn, and what I am about to share with you today is not about getting a promotion. It is not about climbing a corporate ladder. It is about a shift that happens inside a person's mind, a shift that changes the entire trajectory of a life. And once you see it, you will never be able to unsee it. Because here's what nobody wants to admit. Most people are not held back by a lack of opportunity. They are held back by a way of thinking that was installed in them so early, so quietly, that they never even questioned it. They learned to wait for permission. They learned to wait for instructions. They learned to make their world small enough to be safe and comfortable enough to never demand more of themselves. And there is nothing wrong with hard work. Hard work is honorable. But hard work without direction is like running as fast as you can in a fog. You may be exhausted at the end of the day, and you may still be exactly where you began. I have spent my life studying successful people, and I have spent just as much time studying people who worked twice as hard and never got anywhere. And the difference was never talent. It was never luck. It was a handful of decisions about how to think. Decisions that anyone listening to me right now has the power to make today. If you have ever felt like you are doing everything right and still not moving forward, if you have ever watched someone with less experience than you rise faster than you, if you have ever wondered why some people seem to create opportunity out of thin air while others wait their whole lives for opportunity to knock, then what I am about to tell you is going to answer a question you have been carrying for a very long time. Write this down if you need to, because I am only going to walk through it once, and I want you to actually catch it. If this is speaking to something inside you right now, if you feel like you have more in you than your current situation is asking of you, tell me in the comments, because I read every single one, and I want to know exactly where you are starting from today. Because what separates a worker from a leader is not a title. It is not an office. It is not a promotion letter signed by someone above you. It is a decision that happens quietly, in private, long before anyone else notices it. And in a few moments, I am going to show you the exact mental shift that changes everything, the one most people go their entire careers without ever discovering. And once you hear it, you will realize you have had the power to make this shift the entire time. Let's start with the truest, simplest difference there is. A worker waits for direction. A leader creates direction. That single sentence, if you let it sink in, will change how you walk into every room for the rest of your life. A worker asks, what am I supposed to do? A leader asks, what needs to happen next? On the surface, those questions sound almost identical. In practice, they produce two completely different lives. The first question keeps you dependent on someone else's vision. The second question puts you in charge of your own. Think about how most people were raised to approach work. Show up. Do what you're told. Don't make waves. Finish the assignment. Collect the paycheck. Go home. For a long time, this was sold to millions of people as the safe path, the responsible path, the path that leads to stability. And to be fair, it does lead to stability. But stability and growth are not the same thing. And a life built entirely around stability has a ceiling. A ceiling most people don't even realize is there until they hit their head on it. A worker is focused on completing the assignment. A leader is focused on achieving the outcome. That is not a small distinction. One person wants to check the box. The other person wants to make sure the box being checked actually matters. I want you to picture two men on the exact same construction site, doing what looks, from a distance, like the exact same job. One of them says, I'm carrying bricks. The other one says, I'm building something families are going to live in for the next 50 years. Same hands, same bricks, same sweat, completely different relationship to the work. And here is what almost nobody tells you. That second man is not going to stay in that position for long. Not because someone is going to notice him and promote him, although that often happens, but because he has already started thinking like the person one level above him. And that kind of thinking is like gravity. It pulls opportunity towards you. For years, people have believed that the only path forward is to simply work harder, arrive earlier, leave later, say yes to everything. And I want to be very clear. Hard work matters. I have never met a lazy person who built something lasting. But hard work without direction is activity without impact. You can spend an entire day, an entire year, an entire decade climbing a ladder, only to discover the ladder was leaning against the wrong wall the whole time. A worker asks, how can I complete this faster? A leader asks, why are we doing this in the first place? And is there a better way? One question makes you efficient. The other question makes you valuable. And value, not effort, is what actually gets rewarded in this life, even though almost nobody explains that to you when you're young. This is where vision starts to separate people. A worker sees the task directly in front of them. A leader sees how that task connects to everything around it. A worker is thinking about today. A leader is already asking what this decision means 6 months from now, a year from now, 5 years from now. That is not a personality trait. Some people are born with and others are not. It is a habit. It is a question you train yourself to ask until asking it becomes automatic. And once you start asking bigger questions, something interesting happens. You start noticing things other people walk right past. You start noticing patterns before they become emergencies. You start noticing openings before anyone else even sees them as openings. That is not magic. That is attention applied consistently over time in a specific direction. And here is something I need you to sit with for a moment, because it is going to matter more than almost anything else I share with you today. There is a moment coming later in this video where I am going to walk you through the exact difference between the questions successful people ask themselves privately and the questions everyone else never thinks to ask at all. And once you hear those questions, you are going to recognize immediately which ones you have been asking your entire life. Now let's go deeper, because understanding the difference between a worker and a leader is only useful if you know what to actually do with that understanding. So let's talk about growth, because this is where most people quietly stall out without ever realizing it. A worker typically measures success by completion. Did I finish the project? Did I hit the number? Did I meet the deadline? Those are fair questions, and there is nothing wrong with wanting to finish what you start. But a leader asks a different question entirely. Not did I finish, but what did this experience actually teach me? Because here is something worth remembering. Every challenge you face hands you two things. It hands you a result, and it hands you a lesson. The result is often temporary. A project ends. A quarter closes. A deal falls through or comes together. But the lesson, if you actually pay attention to it, stays with you for the rest of your life. A difficult project sharpens your judgment. A setback strengthens your decision-making in ways comfort never could. A hard conversation teaches you patience you didn't know you needed. A mistake reveals a blind spot you never knew you had. And once you see that blind spot, you can never fully unsee it again. This is why the people who rise fastest in any field are rarely chasing achievements for their own sake. They are chasing development. They are not trying to become a success story. They are trying to become the kind of person who can create valuable results again and again in different situations, under different pressures, with different people. And here is why that distinction matters so much. Your current achievements are limited by your current capacity. If you want more than what you currently have, achievement alone will not get you there. You have to increase your capacity first, and the results will follow, because they always follow capacity. So instead of only asking, what do I want to achieve? Start asking a second, deeper question. Who do I need to become in order to achieve it? That single question, asked honestly and repeatedly, can completely redirect the next 10 years of your life. Now, let's talk about something practical, because I don't want to leave you with philosophy alone. I want to leave you with something you can use starting today. If you want to start thinking like a leader instead of a worker, begin with your language, because language shapes thought more than people realize. Every time you catch yourself saying, that's not my job, pause and ask instead, how could I help improve this? Every time you find yourself waiting for someone else to fix a problem, ask yourself, what is the first step I could take right now without anyone's permission? You do not need a title to start thinking this way. You do not need an office, a promotion, or a team reporting to you. Leadership thinking is available to you the moment you decide to use it, regardless of what your business card says. And here's an unexpected angle most people never consider. Sometimes the biggest obstacle to thinking like a leader isn't a lack of confidence. It's comfort. It is very easy to stay a worker because being a worker asks very little of you emotionally. You show up, you follow instructions, you go home, and nobody expects more from you than that. Becoming a leader means you start expecting more from yourself, and that can feel uncomfortable at first, even a little frightening, because now the results are truly yours. You can no longer blame the instructions you were given. You are the one giving them, even if only to yourself. If any part of what I just said made you a little uncomfortable, good. That discomfort is often the exact signal that you are standing right at the edge of real growth. Sit with it instead of running from it. Because coming up in just a moment, I am going to reveal something that most people never realize about why the same problems keep repeating in their lives and their careers, no matter how hard they work to fix them. And once you understand it, you will never look at a recurring problem the same way again. Here is something I have noticed after decades of watching people build businesses, build careers, and build lives. A worker solves the problem directly in front of them. A leader asks why that problem keeps showing up in the first place. If the same mistake happens every single week, fixing it every single week is not leadership. It is exhaustion disguised as diligence. Finding out what is actually causing it and changing the process so it stops happening altogether, that is leadership. That is the difference between treating symptoms and curing causes. And it is one of the most valuable shifts a person can make in their entire thinking. This is where systems come in. And I want you to really hear this part, because it is going to reframe how you look at your own daily life. A system takes individual effort and turns it into repeatable performance. A checklist, a morning routine, a clear standard you hold yourself to, a better process for getting something done. None of these things need to be complicated or impressive. The entire purpose of a system is simple. It makes the right action easier to repeat, especially on the days when you don't feel like doing it. Workers, generally speaking, depend heavily on motivation. And motivation is a wonderful thing when it shows up, but motivation is unreliable by nature. It rises, and it falls, and it disappears entirely on the days you need it most. Leaders understand this about themselves. So instead of depending on motivation alone, they build structure around themselves that keeps working even when motivation is nowhere to be found. That is not a lack of passion. That is wisdom, earned the hard way, usually after enough mornings of waking up and simply not feeling like it. Here is the truth most people never say out loud. If your success depends entirely on how you feel on any given day, your success was never actually stable to begin with. If you want something that this information can genuinely change for you, take it seriously enough to write down one system you could build this week. One small structure that makes the right action easier on the days your motivation disappears, because that single habit could be the difference between where you are now and where you want to be a year from now. And if this is helping you see your own life a little differently right now, do something for me. Like this video, and share it with someone in your life who is working hard but feels stuck. Someone who deserves to hear this too. Because sometimes the people closest to us need exactly this kind of reminder, and we are often the ones in the best position to give it to them. Now let's go one layer deeper, because there is something almost nobody talks about when it comes to leadership. And it might be the most important shift of this entire video. Leadership requires influence, and real influence can never be demanded. A title can hand you authority. It cannot hand you genuine commitment. People will follow an instruction because they have no choice. People follow an example because they actually believe in it. And there is an enormous difference between the two. This is why the strongest leaders spend far less time telling people what standards to meet, and far more time simply living those standards themselves. If you expect discipline from the people around you, become disciplined first. If you expect honesty, become honest, even when honesty costs you something. If you expect people to keep their word, keep yours. especially when it's inconvenient. If you expect calm during a difficult moment, learn to remain calm yourself long before that moment ever arrives. People watch what you actually do far more closely and far more honestly than they ever listen to what you say. Your behavior, repeated consistently over time, becomes your real message, whether you intend it to or not. And that reframes something most people get completely backward. Trust is not built through one good decision. It is not built through one honest conversation, no matter how sincere it is in the moment. Trust is built through consistency, repeated so many times that people simply come to expect it from you, the same way they expect the sun to rise. Leadership, at its core, is credibility, repeated until people know, without a shadow of doubt, that they can depend on you when it actually matters. Now, I want to talk about a skill that quietly separates the people who are constantly caught off guard by life from the people who always seem to have a plan ready, no matter what happens. Workers, generally speaking, react to events. Leaders prepare for them. And I want to be clear about what that actually means, because it is often misunderstood. Preparing for the future does not mean predicting every detail of what is coming. Nobody can do that, and anyone who claims they can is not being honest with you. What it actually means is studying patterns and asking better questions long before you need the answers. What could go wrong here? What might change in the next 6 months? What will this situation require of me that it doesn't require today? What happens if the plan I'm counting on doesn't work out the way I expect? These are uncomfortable questions to sit with, and that discomfort is exactly why most people avoid asking them. But here is what that preparation actually buys you. It buys you calm. When something unexpected happens, and something unexpected always eventually happens, the person who has already considered the possibility is not thrown into panic the way everyone else is. They already have options sitting in their back pocket because they took the time to think ahead while things were still calm enough to think clearly. This is why some of the most successful people you will ever meet appear unusually composed during a crisis. It is rarely because they are fearless. Fearlessness is a myth most of the time. It is because they already thought about this exact possibility long before it arrived, and thinking about it in advance stripped away most of its power to surprise them. And here is something that might genuinely surprise you, because it surprises most people the first time they truly understand it. None of what we have covered today, not the vision, not the systems, not the influence, not the preparation, none of it actually matters if you cannot first lead yourself. Self-leadership is the foundation everything else stands on, and it is the piece almost everybody skips, because it is the least glamorous and the most demanding. Before you manage a team, learn to manage your own time. Before you demand discipline from other people, practice discipline in the parts of your life nobody else is watching. Before you expect consistency from anyone else, become consistent in the small commitments you make only to yourself. Your daily habits, the ones nobody applauds, the ones nobody even sees, are quietly revealing whether you're actually ready for greater responsibility, whether you're asking for it out loud or not. How you behave when nobody is watching matters more than how you behave when everyone is. How you respond when a plan falls apart matters. How you carry yourself under real pressure matters. How quickly you get back up after a mistake without spiraling into self-pity matters more than almost anything else on this list. You do not need to be perfect. Nobody is asking that of you. And frankly, nobody who is actually accomplishing anything meaningful is perfect either. But you do need to take full responsibility for your own behavior, your own choices, and your own recovery. Because that, more than any title or promotion, is where leadership genuinely begins. And there is one more layer to this I have not shared with you yet. One that ties everything together. And I promise you, it is coming up next. Eventually, if you keep walking this path, there comes a quiet moment when something shifts permanently inside you. You realize leadership was never a position you were waiting to be handed. It was never behind a door someone else was holding shut. It is a mindset. And mindsets are built through practice, the same way any other skill is built, one repetition at a time. You stop saying, "That's not my responsibility." And you start asking, how can I help improve this? You stop waiting for someone else to solve the problem in front of you, and you start looking for the first step you can take right now without waiting for permission from anyone. You stop measuring your own value by how busy you appear to be, and you start measuring it by the actual value you create for the people around you. The worker focuses on activity. The leader focuses on impact. The worker protects their own assignment. The leader protects the larger mission, even when protecting it costs them something personally. The worker asks, what do I get out of this? The leader asks, what can I build that outlasts me? And perhaps the single most important question of all, the one I want you to carry with you long after this video ends, is this. What am I becoming through the work I am choosing to do every single day? Because leadership is not something that suddenly appears the moment someone hands you a promotion. It is built quietly, in private, through your decisions, your habits, your discipline, your thinking, and your willingness to take ownership when it would be far easier to look away. You do not need anyone's permission to begin. You can start today, right where you are standing, with exactly what you currently have in front of you. Think beyond the task that's sitting on your desk right now. Look for the bigger picture surrounding it. Sharpen your skills, even in small, quiet ways nobody else notices. Build systems that outlast your motivation on the days it disappears. Prepare yourself for what's coming, instead of simply reacting once it arrives. Lead yourself fully and honestly before you ever attempt to lead another person. And above everything else, take full responsibility for the direction of your own life. Because the moment you stop waiting for someone else to build your path for you and start taking ownership of where you are actually going, something in you changes permanently. You are no longer simply completing work. You are creating real value. You are no longer just following someone else's direction. You are developing direction of your own. You are no longer only working harder. You are finally learning to think better. And that, more than any title, any promotion, or any corner office, is the real transition. This is Jim Rohn, and I want you to understand something clearly before you go. This shift I've described to you today is not reserved for a select few people who are simply born differently than you. It is available to absolutely anyone willing to start thinking this way, starting with the very next decision you make after this video ends. It is not a transition from employee to manager. It is not a transition from worker to boss. It is a transition from following responsibility to fully owning it. And that is exactly where real leadership begins. If this message reached you today, if even one part of it is exactly what you needed to hear, then let's keep this going together. Subscribe to this channel and turn on the bell notification, because I have more conversations like this one waiting for you. Conversations that can genuinely change the direction of your life if you let them. And I don't want you to miss a single one.